Alright, so right now we're going to talk about prejudice and discrimination in social psychology. Identify the origins of prejudice, distinguish the measuring practice for prejudice and discrimination. Ways to reduce prejudice and discrimination. Alright, so what does it mean to be prejudiced, to prejudge, to discriminate? Well, first we have what's called a stereotype. And this is when we generalize our own beliefs about a particular group. It could be something that can be positive, like a certain race may be good at math or science, or it could be negative, like maybe females aren't good with math or being engineers. And so those stereotypes have an effect on the way we behave, and the way we behave because of those stereotypes or prejudice is what discrimination is. Okay. Again, a prejudice is a negative or could be positive evaluation of a particular group and its members. Or you're generalizing. It's basically what it is. All right. You might have one instance and you generalize from there. Like discrimination is again your behavior towards these particular groups based on your stereotypes and your prejudice. It could be positive or negative, but most of the time it's a negative behavior towards these particular groups. It could be any kind of group. A lot of times it's race, because looking at a person's skin color is the easiest way for people to make a judgment about someone, unfortunately. Whether or not someone speaks English, you prejudge them like they're lazy or they can't do that. None of these is true. We have many people who learn, many people who are not lazy, and all these other things. And so we have to be cognizant of not falling for these stereotypes of people, and accept an individual for what they are worth and what they can accomplish, and not stereotype just because of the way they look or where they're from or how they speak. Sometimes this can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're a girl growing up in the public school system and you've been told that girls aren't very good at math but they're very good at English, that might have an effect on that little girl, where she will have a self-fulfilling prophecy, where she won't try as hard at math and do really well in English. Again, just because of what other people stereotypes towards that individual, only based because of their gender, race, and how they talk, and all those other things. So how is it that we learn to be this way? Well, it's not innate. We're not born this way. We're not born wanting to be prejudiced towards a particular group of individuals because of the way they look and so forth. All right. One is we've seen other people do it. We've seen our parents do it. We've seen other adults do it. Little kids that go to the Phelps Church in Topeka, they've seen their parents do it, other adults do it, and so they learn to hold up those terrible signs. And they learn this through a very important critical period, through pruning process, and they're young, and so it could be a very difficult thing to get out of, to learn to grow out of, anyways. And it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen sometime. And then we have social identity theory. We are very egocentric. We have problems seeing the world from another person's perspective. A lot of times what we have is people who says, well, I was able to do this and this. Well, you're not them. You don't know what they've experienced. Just because you were able to do something or something's not affecting you does not mean it's not affecting other people. And it's very hard for us to really understand, especially if we have these stereotypes and stuff like that, to get over that, to understand that we're all human beings. We've all got our own story going on, and just because your story worked out one way does not mean it could work out exactly the same way for other people. Usually people use this as a type of deflection for other people's problems, saying, well, I, always comparing to themselves or to people their own group. You could take, if you like, you could take this, go to this website, and you could take a test to see how prejudiced you are towards particular groups of people or genders and so forth. And we all have our own prejudice and stereotypes because we've all grown up in it. It's nearly impossible. But it is very important to be aware that you have these and to do whatever you can or steps to overcome them. And, to be a better person. So how can we reduce prejudice and discrimination? One is, the military does a very good job at this. Sports teams do a very good job of this. Basically what it is that we have mixed groups working together for a common cause or a common goal. When they're able to work together and get to know each other, then whatever stereotypes they've had coming in slowly disappear. And so it's important to be around people who are different from you, the way they look, the way they sound, the way they talk, where they're from, in order to completely understand that we're all just people. And this might explain the reasons why when large urban communities tend to be, they're mixed with each other and they tend to at least seem to be less discrimination in comparison to smaller towns and so forth. The idea here is you want to be able to be around people who are different from you, so you learn that they're not all the same. You can't fall for stereotypes. We like to compare and contrast. Our positive and negative social behavior, we have to compare and contrast. Like and love and explain aggressions and pro-social behavior. How much time I got left? Halfway done. Alright. Interpersonal attraction is just positive feelings towards one another. It used to be for you to form a relationship with anybody, you had to be around them, and now we have the internet. And so this world is a lot smaller now, and so we actually could have positive feelings towards somebody we've never physically met. And so that's producing a strange or different society than I grew up in. I grew up there was no such thing as internet, and now we have the internet. When I asked a girl out, I had to do it face to face or over the phone, and when she said no, it was pretty rough, right? But now we got text and Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and you name it. All right. So again, factors in attraction is proximity, how close you are, and how often you're exposed to that person, and the mere exposure effect. Are you around them all the time? And is your interaction a positive one? There's two types of love that we need to know about when you're dealing with the opposite gender. There's passionate love. This starts out at first. You always want to be around each other. You're always kissing each other. If you're an adult, this is where the most intercourse is happening, and so you're always physiologically aroused when you're around the other person. You're constantly thinking about the other person. Now, if you get married, that passion love can remain, all right, but you more come into what's called a companionship love, in which you're a team now, and you're together, and you're in this life together to live life and be best friends. And what normally happens is most relationships start out as passionate and turn into companionship. All right. Aggression is the intent to injure or to harm another person. It could be a verbal aggression. It usually comes out of anger, maybe a catharsis, a discharge of built-up aggression. Frustration aggression principle.
Are you okay?
Frustration produces anger, leads to readiness. When we get frustrated, we like to attack, to go after other people who are making us frustrated. Okay, observational learning approach. Again, watching other people be aggressive can make aggressive children who grow up to be aggressive adults. But if we have pro-social behavior, we can still do the same thing. Okay. A lot of times we have what's called diffusion of responsibility. And this is like the bystander effect. When you have a person who is injured or sick, that person is actually least likely to get help when there's more people around, because there is what's called a diffusion of responsibility. If there's 100 people in a room, well, I can live with 1% responsibility. Alright? I can live with that. But if it's just me or one other person, or that person just looks at me and asks me specifically for help, well then the 1% turns into 100%. And 100% is something that will be difficult to live with, so you're more likely to do something. I might not finish this. Pro-social behavior, noticing a person who needs help, interpreting whether or not they require help, assume responsibility to help that person, and deciding on implementing help. Alright, altruism is just doing good things for people and requiring self-sacrifice. Get up and do something. Don't be afraid of willing to stick out of the crowd. Stress and coping. I am going to do stress and coping on another video because I think I need more time. So I'll leave it right here.